Right, so we are going to go ahead and begin with our next presentation. Uh, this person needs absolutely no introduction, but I'm still going to flub it anyway. This is Erin Leonard, a very prolific L2 out of the DFW area. What? At working. I think you work more events than most of the rest of us in the room combined.
Probably not.
Oh, sorry. I forget that Baldy is here. And I said most of the rest of us. So.
There you go. All right.
All right, so everybody please give your attention and your applause to Erin Leonard.
All right, Erin, thank you so much for that completely unnecessarily embarrassing introduction there. Hi, welcome to 10 Steps to Taking a Judge Call. How many of you have ever taken a judge call? Okay, all right, good. How many of you know the 10 steps to taking a judge call? Nobody. Maybe somebody at home raised their hand, I hope, because nobody in this room seems to know this. All right, so as I frequently like to do, we're going to start out with a story, because this is the story of why I do this presentation. Once upon a time, I took a judge call. This judge call was at a Grand Prix. It was Amonkhet, Hour of Devastation-y times in the world. And this table was, you know, not the top tables. We were probably maybe table 100, 150 or so towards the end of the day. So it was, we were in decent shape. But, you know, this wasn't like, oh my God, this is going to make somebody's Pro Tour invite or not kind of a call. So I go to this table and I take this judge call and I walk over and I'm like, hey guys, what's up? What can I do for you? And they're like, I activated my scavenger grounds, and then my opponent wants to embalm his Vizier of Many Faces. Is that an activated ability? No, it's not? It's an activated ability, so I'm like, well, let me make sure, you know, I pick up the card and I read it, it's got a cost, it's got a colon, you know. Yeah, looks like an activated ability. Yep, it's an activated ability. The guy goes, I appeal. Okay. Sure, you can absolutely appeal whether or not something's an activated ability, right? Off I go to find the head judge. I go find one John Aldifer. Hey, John, I have an appeal. He's like, okay, great, what's the question? Is embalm an activated ability? that was the answer I got from John, too. He's like, well, what was the question? I was like, he appealed that I said embalm was an activated ability. John's like, okay, sure. We go back to the table, and John talks to the players, and the guy explains that, yes, he did, in fact, appeal that. And the player's like, is that an activated ability? And he's like, yeah. You know, in his burgundy shirt, he happily tells the players, yes, it is. And then he goes on to explain that, yes, you can, in fact, activate said activated ability in response to something else being activated and put on the stack. So, yes, you can absolutely activate your embalm ability in response to your opponent's scavenger grounds. And yes, you can absolutely embalm the thing before it gets exiled from the graveyard. No? You can't? What? You can only embalm with sorcery speed? Did I read my abilities wrong? Okay. I definitely got my ability names wrong. See why I'm terrible at this job? It might be Eternalize. Yeah. Okay. So apparently it was not Embalm, it was Eternalize. All right. Whatever the ability was, so, okay, confession time, guys. I forgot my notes. Because my notes were in my old judge notebook. And guess what? I got a shiny new judge notebook that didn't have my notes in it. So, my apologies, wrong ability name. Whatever the ability name was. Thank you guys, by the way. I'm glad somebody's good at magic here, because it's not me. Not me at all. All right, whatever the ability was, yes, you could do this thing. And yes, I got the call completely right. And yes, it got appealed and completely upheld because I got the call completely right, because at the time I knew what the ability was called. And off our burgundy-shirted friend went, going, huh, that was stupid. Well, there happened to be another judge watching me take this call. And he says, hey, can I talk to you about that call? I was like, yeah, what's up? And he goes, you just gave an answer that was completely and totally correct. I was like, yeah, cool, I'm good at this job. He's like, and it did no one at that table any good whatsoever. Yeah, he was right. Because while I took this judge call, and while I absolutely gave a correct answer, it was right, it was accurate, it didn't benefit anybody, and I wasted a whole lot of people's time because not only did I not answer the question they were actually asking me, I had to go spend time finding a burgundy who was not anywhere near where we were and dragging him across the room when he could have been doing other things while these players were waiting. And when they, in their 8-minute time extension, were finally done with this judge call, yes, they were, in fact, the last table done at the end of that round. So, this judge who shadowed my call challenged me. He said, you should think about how you take judge calls. Well, I never really thought through how to take judge calls. And he goes, well, why don't you write down 10 steps to taking a judge call? Why don't you figure out, how do you take a judge call? What are you supposed to do when you take a judge call? How could you do a better job of that? So that was on Saturday. And on Sunday, he comes up to me and says, so did you do the thing? Do you have your 10 steps? I was like, well. And we ended up having a really great conversation, but I don't want to skip ahead to that quite yet. First of all, I want to challenge you to do a better job than I did and write down 10 steps taking a judge call. So find a sheet of paper, a notepad, write it on your phone, whatever. You can do this too if you're at home. If you're watching the stream, I bet you own paper. Let's hope. Or you're probably on a computer. Notepad's your friend. Write down 10 steps to taking a judge call. Number your paper 1 through 10. Write them down, what you think they are. Type them up, make a PowerPoint, I don't care. Somebody's getting all fancy over here.
I was going to do it on paper, but I couldn't find another pen.
Can't find a pen. All right. Do it on your phone. I don't care. Might be onto something there. Do we have some steps written down? Some 8? Okay, we're getting there. You have numbered the paper to 10 and written nothing on it. All right, we've got 10 steps there. How are you only on 5? You're just writing numbers. There's not even any words on that paper. You did not write it in invisible ink. All right, we have 1. 12, okay. Overachiever back here, we have 12. All right. Don't be sorry, you can have 12 if you want. 14. How long are your time extensions? There you go. Yeah. All right. How many of you came up with 10 steps taking a judge call? Okay. How many of you came up with some number between 5 and 10? How many of you came up with a number greater than 10? 1. For the viewers at home, we have 1. How many of you came up with less than 5? Nope. 1? Okay. How many of you think that there are probably more steps, but you didn't write them all down? The person who has 14 is now raising his hand. Yeah. Okay, so when I was asked to do this, I wrote 7, and I was totally stuck at 7. I was like, I don't know, what else are you supposed to do? I got 7, like this is all the things I would do. Let's talk about some of these steps. Let's talk about what they are. What do you do first when you take a judge call? What's the first thing you do? What do you think? Introduce yourself. Hi, I'm Erin. I'm gonna be your judge today. It's nice to meet you. How you doing? Like that?
I mean, in more than enough words, yes. Introduce yourself, what you are, and move into the second step.
What's the second step?
Gather information.
Okay, so introduce yourself and then gather information. What else do we do? What do you think?
I think you start with acknowledging as you make your way over to them.
Oh, acknowledge them before you get to the table. Okay, what else? Note the time, very important. What else? Look at the clock, yes. Note the time, look at the clock. Some form of, hey, when did I get there? What else? Your demeanor. How are you going to act when you approach the table? If I walk up to you to take your judge call and I start with, what do you want? I mean, maybe there's some Magic players that you want to say that to. But in general, that's probably not how we're going to start our interactions with our Magic players. Not you again. Table 37, you've got to stop calling me over here. Right? So, a couple of you mentioned things that are before you actually got to the table. One of those relevant facts is you should probably check the clock on your way to the table or as you arrive at the table. If you think you're probably going to be issuing a time extension, it's super relevant to know how long that time extension should be. So, if you don't know what time you got there, how are you going to know what time to give them later? Just guessing is not a good plan. People tend to guess longer than they should, and players get a lot of extra time that way, which is really not fair to the players in that match, because then their match is an unnatural time. It's also not fair to the other players around them who all have to sit and wait because you gave them 8 minutes because you don't know what time you got to the table. Also, several of you mentioned some form of looking at the situation or gathering some kind of information. What information can you gather before you get to the table that might be relevant to said judge call? Zach, what do you think? Where they're at. Why does that matter? Right, absolutely. I'm going to repeat that so that it gets onto the stream here. If you're taking a call at, say, table 2, your players in that area of the tournament, especially towards the end of the day, are likely to be more competitive. They're playing a match that's going to be potentially very focused on the outcome. They're maybe more likely to appeal. They might be more likely to be more frustrated should the ruling not go their way. Whereas if you're taking a call and you're at table 500, towards the end of the day especially, where you've got folks who are maybe still in it for fun, they're having a good time, they're out of contention for money or prizes or things like that, the attitude at that table may be different. They may not be as concerned about you getting every technical detail of that ruling right. They may be more interested in a resolution that feels almost like a regular REL resolution. They just want to play Magic and have fun, but they want to do it right. Those tables are probably less likely to get super argumentative with you. So being aware of where in the tournament you are is really relevant. What else?
This may be a thing at large-scale events, though. What tournament is it?
What event are we in? Yes. How many times have side events been in one column and the main event's been in the column next to it and you're standing in the aisle in between? You take this call over here and you're having lots of fun in this crazy two-headed giant event and it's awesome and you made a super fun, silly rule and you're joking with the players. And then you turn around and your next call is a comp REL call where these people are not so appreciative of your goofy attitude. So yeah, paying attention to not just where in the tournament, but potentially what tournament you're in. What else?
If the games have gone to turns.
Right, if we're past time, your ruling's probably going to be looked at a little differently. Potentially what time in the round it is. We mentioned to note the time. Another thing that is potentially relevant about that, if we're looking at maybe a slow play situation or something like that, knowing what time in the round it is relevant. If you looked at the clock to give the correct time extension, you have this information. You know what time in the round it is. What else?
The attitude of the players, are they hot-headed, are they calm-minded?
Yeah, the attitude of the players. Sometimes you can get a feel for that as you walk up. Anybody ever walked up to a table and you can feel the tension? Yeah, some of you have walked up to that table. If you can hear them laughing as you're on your way over there, you know they made some kind of blunder, but they're probably pretty good-natured about it, right? If the table next to them is laughing along with them, then you know they made some kind of really great blunder. But you're going to get a different response from those players. So yeah, gauge the mood. Figure out where you are, figure out when you are, figure out what's going on at this table. You got a lot going on before you ever even spoke to these people. By the way, for those of you who like to take notes, I'm going to go ahead and tell you the secret now. There aren't 10 steps taking judge call. Oh, I know. If you wanted the step-by-step guide, I'm sorry, you don't get it. Because different people write their steps differently. So some people write, note the time, note the tournament, note the attitude as 3 different steps. Some people write, get a feel for the situation as 1 step. Depending on how succinct you are and how much you like numbered lists, what I want to encourage you to do here is create your own version of flowchart, numbered steps, whatever you want to do, as a way to understand how to take a judge call. Don't throw away your paper. I see you. But I'm not going to give you 10 exact steps. For me, it's actually 7. I ended up with 7. But that was the point of the exercise, was to figure out there aren't 10 exact steps for everybody, because some people combine some of the steps together and some people spread them out. So in your note-taking, I don't want you to have that little panic attack of like, she didn't say what step number this is. The step number is less important. What's important is what it is you do at this judge call. If you're, at your local game store, at your local F&M, you probably know what kind of mood you're walking into. But if you're at a tournament somewhere that you don't know, that assessing the mood may be a much bigger step. So some of these steps may get omitted in certain places. Some of these, knowing which tournament you're in. If there's only one tournament, you might not have to check. If you're at a big event, frequently the color of the match slips will tell you what tournament you're in. That's a super relevant point. If you're at F&M and you don't use match slips, maybe that's not going to help you so much. So some of your steps are going to vary a little bit. All right, so after we've kind of approached the table, we've figured out what's going on, we are going to greet the players. I wouldn't take forever and a day doing this, but what's a good way to greet the players? What's the first thing you could say to these people, Tim?
Hi players, how can I help?
Hi players, how can I help? That works. We've greeted them and we have moved on into what we can do. If you start with something like, how you doing? I mean, they might tell you they have gas. You never know. Be careful with that one. You never know what they're going to say.
New goal.
Had a player do it. I'm hungry. Can you get me a sandwich? No. Anything else I can help you with? Yeah. Be careful with your greeting depending on sometimes where you are and sometimes who you are. For example, some people do not like being referred to as guys, particularly if they are not male. Some people don't care. But that's one of those that I've seen players uncomfortable with that particular greeting. For me personally, I hate being called friends. It implies a level of familiarity I don't have with you. I've never met you before in my life. You just appeared at my table out of nowhere. We are not friends. Because there are people who will take advantage of that, oh yeah, I'm your friend, you can trust me kind of feeling. So that's when I hear people suggest a lot of saying, hey, yeah, call them friends. The only person who gets away with that is my son's 3-year-old preschool teacher. They're all friends in preschool, apparently. But when you're talking to adults you don't know, particularly adults who may not be of your same gender, sometimes friends can come across as presuming a familiarity that you don't have with those people, so I would be real careful with that one. In the South, hey y'all or hey folks or something like that works. Yeah, players is generally safe, you know. Or just hi, howdy, something like that tends to be fine. You should probably say something. If Elijah calls for a judge and I walk up to the table, I just stand there. This is awkward. I'm sorry, I'm doing it off camera. Yeah, if Kenny calls for a judge and I walk up here, it's awkward. You're the judge. Act like you're in control of the situation. Walk over and say something to start the conversation. Hi, how can I help you? What can I do for you? Sometimes you don't have to ask. If you walk over and the player jumps out of his chair and grabs his crotch and heads for the bathroom, you probably don't have to ask what he needs. Just tell him to go. You know, if you walk over there and the player holds up his hand and there's blood dripping from it, how can I help you is probably not a useful thing to say at that point. You know? Yeah. Oh or oh my, yeah. Right. If the player walks over and, or if you walk over and the player points to the human feces in the floor, you know, I really didn't do that level of research. My understanding is it was believed to be human. I did not investigate personally, sorry. Yes, the feces story is true. But in some cases, usually the cases we don't really want to talk about, the question is obvious. You know, when you walk over and they have clearly presented their decks and there's a card flipped face up, there's probably something going on with that card. It's the only face-up card on the playmat. They've both got a deck face down, and there's this one random card there. The question's probably going to be about that card, right? Sometimes when you get to the table, a player stands up, and they start to walk away from the table like they want to talk to you away from the table. Probably a good guess. They want to talk to you away from the table, right? So in some cases, the players are going to guide you here. If they don't guide you, you can ask a question. How can I help you? Or something like that, so that the players will tell you what's going on. Now, at this point, we have to make an assessment of what it is we're doing here. In my brain, I chunk these into 3 categories. We'll go over the most entertaining first, the other category. This is, they don't have a rules question, they don't have a policy question, they need some other kind of help. They have to go to the bathroom, they lost their backpack, their girlfriend is in labor and they want to know if they can answer their cell phone. Yes, that one happened. What are you doing here? Get out of here. Like, are you serious right now? You know, so they want to refuse to sign the match slip. You know, when you get the other call, you have to figure out what it is they need and what is the reasonable and appropriate first aid kit, whatever, solution that these people need. Usually it's, I want to go to the bathroom or something like that. And usually the answer is, I'm going to do the thing that any reasonable human being would do, and then I'm going to give you a time extension. We're going to move on with life. How long is your time extension, by the way? What's the maximum? Up to 10 minutes. Thank you very much. If we have something where the person needs to leave the table or go do a thing, the general answer is up to 10 minutes. If they're gone for more than that, then we generally are going to give them the match loss and we're going to move on with life, because at that point they are away for such a long amount of time it becomes really detrimental to the tournament. There are some exceptions to that within reason, but use your judgment on that one. The other two types of calls are general rules calls or policy calls. A rules call is just a how does work? How does this interaction work? How does this card work? Can I get the oracle text? Whatever. They don't know how to do the thing that they are trying to do or their opponent is trying to do, or can you explain my cards to my opponent? That one comes up a lot. Player says, my card does thing. Opponent says, no, it doesn't. And then you get to arbitrate some level of that. In these calls, nobody's done anything wrong. Nobody's getting a penalty. We're just trying to make sure that we play Magic the way we want to play Magic. We fix it, we give time extension, we move on with life. The other type of call that is very, very common is the policy question. The policy question is, something happened in our game that either shouldn't have happened in our game, or maybe we think it shouldn't have happened, even if it is perfectly legal. You know, my opponent says that's a 2-2, and I think it's not, but he didn't announce his prowess trigger, so clearly it didn't get that +1/+1, right? That's a policy question. Did we miss the trigger? Did we not miss the trigger? Turns out we actually didn't, kind of thing. So we have that conversation. In the case of a policy question, the type of call where there's going to be a penalty, there are a couple of different ways to address this, but the one that I personally prefer is infraction, penalty, and then explanation. So figure out what it is that happened. Is there an infraction? If not, we have a rules question. Answer the rules question, move on with life. If there is an infraction, what is it? Do we have a hidden card error? Do we have a game rule violation? That guy just threw a table. We might have aggressive behavior. You know, whatever it is, what is it? And then the penalty, what are we going to do about it? I'm going to give this guy a warning versus I'm going to give this guy a game loss. And then once we figure that out, we can move on with a solution. Here's your game loss. Does that end the match? Those types of situations. So you're going to do whatever it is you need to do to get this game fixed or figured out or back on track as appropriate. Now we're done, right? I fixed the problem. Yeah? We're done? That's it? That's the last thing I did. I solved the problem. We're good. No? Write something down somewhere. What do I write down?
Depends on if there was an infraction, a penalty, and a fix.
Extension.
And a time extension. Yes. If you didn't hear that for the streamers, Kenny said, depends on if there was an infraction or a penalty or a fix. Yeah. If I gave a penalty of some kind, I should probably do something useful with that. The usual answer is write it down on the match slip, although some TOs are now moving towards an online penalty entry system, and if that's the case, you should use that instead. But whatever it is, that information about that penalty you gave, you should probably put that somewhere that someone else can find it, like maybe write it down somewhere. One of my more entertaining judge call stories for you here. I took a call in round 11, and this was when we played 9 rounds on day 1. So we're only in the second round. And it was looking at extra cards. The guy fat fingered the top card of his library, flipped over. No big deal, right? I asked the guy, have you gotten any other penalties today for looking at extra cards? The guy says, yeah, 2. And I said, I just mean today, not yesterday. I mean, this is like 10 minutes into the second round of the day. The guy's like, yeah, this is my third looking at extra cards today. Only 1 this round. I said, what? Well, it just so happens that standing across from me is this level 3 who has this kind of goofy look on his face. He's kind of grinning at me weird. I'm like, oh, what is going on here? I pick up the guy's match slip and look, and sure enough, that judge who's standing there laughing at me has written, looking at extra cards, you know, second penalty on the back of this slip. And turns out, yes, I did in fact have to game loss this guy in the beginning of the second round of the day because he got 3 looking at extra cards penalties in one day, which means we get to upgrade. But had that penalty not been written on that slip, do you think I would have done that? No, I probably actually would have thought this player was maybe misunderstanding because really you got 3 of those in less than an hour. I have other questions, but yeah. Yes, sir.
Well, that's something that also comes with when you interact with the players. I tend to ask players, "Have you received any penalties today?"
Yeah.
When I'm discussing it, because sometimes that does happen. This is the upgraded penalty.
Yeah.
If we don't ask that question, having to go back to the table 20 minutes later and go, "Hey, by the way,"
Right.
it's really, really awkward.
That one's a super feel bad. So, in that particular story, it's a good thing I asked the player if he had gotten any more that day. And the reason that judge was standing across the table from me is he assumed I wasn't going to ask. He was afraid the next person who took a call at that table wasn't going to ask the right question and might not be paying attention to that. So when you do issue a penalty, it's super relevant to ask, have you gotten any more of these penalties today? Sometimes I go with, have you gotten any other penalties today? Because sometimes the players don't really know if it was looking at extra cards or hidden card error or GRV. Some of those get a little muddled in the players' brains. But asking that question, if that's not on your list of things that you do when you take a judge call, please put it on there. Asking that question is really, really important because it prevents the feel bad of having to go back to the table later when the scorekeeper figures out you gave them their third one and you didn't upgrade it. What if the players don't like your solution? Zach? Yeah, you can offer an appeal. Yeah. Yeah. Now, do I go around offering it every time? Yes, you can go to the bathroom. Did you want to appeal that? Let's hope not. Please don't. Even every time you make a ruling, hey, you knocked the top card off of your library. That's looking at extra cards. Did you want to appeal that? Maybe not every single time.
My metric is, and it's a subjective metric, is do I think the penalty is either irreversible or backbreaking?
Right.
Card error, backups you get the team lead approval anyway.
Right. Yeah, if the penalty is irreversible, that's generally a good time to offer an appeal. Also, guess when you should offer the appeal? Is this before or after you did the fix? Before. Don't move the cards around until you have explained what you're going to do, especially if you're going to do a backup or if you're going to do something like a hidden card error. We're going to reveal the hand. Some events, your head judge is going to tell you need to check with a team lead first. If that's the case, you should do that first. But even if it's not, if you're going to do something that is going to reveal information or be irreversible, like if you're going to tell a player they get a game loss, don't let them start packing up their stuff and then decide they want to appeal, because even if they appeal at that point, you've destroyed your board state. So make sure that if you're going to offer the appeal or if you think the players may want to appeal, you're going to be in a situation where you actually want to preserve that board state, preserve the situation before you do anything irreversible. If you think the players still look unhappy with your solution, there's a couple of ways you can go with this. One thing that you can do is offer more explanation. If they're still frustrated after you've said something, sometimes it is helpful to explain the rule or the policy in a little more detail. Sometimes it's helpful to get another judge. If you feel like they're really not clicking with what you're saying, but you think somebody else can explain it better and they happen to be nearby, sometimes that's a worthy goal. Sometimes getting the head judge involved, even if the players don't realize they want to appeal. If they're clearly really unhappy with you, sometimes it's really not a terrible thing to just say, hang on just 1 second, guys. Go grab your head judge, bring him over there, let him know what's going on. That little bit of extra customer service goes a long way. Because a player who hated your ruling in round 2 is going to call you again in round 3. And as that builds up, it can get worse and worse. So taking that extra minute to make sure everybody's happy with your solution is a good thing. Customer satisfaction is good. If it gets to the point that we're now dragging the tournament out, the other thing you can do is tell them, hey, I would love to continue this conversation, but right now I need you to continue playing your match. Either drop from the tournament, we can continue talking right now, or finish your match and then come find me, we can chat after your match or after the tournament. Rather than locking that player out and saying, well, because I said so, that's the end of it. Because I'm the head judge, done, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. Open lines of communication will make your judge calls go a whole lot better. It'll make your players a whole lot happier. Hmm?
If I may just
Yeah.
to be careful to not offer appeals as a caveat or like not to lead with that is, well, you're going to have the opportunity to appeal, but here's my ruling.
Yeah,
You know,
no.
and to not use that as an excuse for not having a full answer or not being as well prepared on your own.
Yeah.
Because that's one that I think we do sometimes as a safety of like, you can appeal,
Right.
but
Yeah, don't offer the appeal till you have made a ruling. Some head judges really, really, really don't want you to bring them appeals until you have made a ruling. You're the judge, you took the call, you make the ruling. There are very few exceptions where you're going to excuse yourself from a call. Those exceptions tend to be things like, hey, I'm actually on this other event and I got roped into a really long call over here, but I need to get back to my other event. Might be a time when you say, hey, here's a judge who's actually on your event. I'm going to leave you in their capable hands and do other thing or whatever. But for the most part, if you are the judge who took the call, you're going to be the judge who finishes that call and make a ruling. Then if they want to appeal, absolutely. If you don't know the answer or you don't feel comfortable making that ruling yourself, don't make a ruling that you think might be incorrect and wait for them to appeal. That is a terrible plan. Do not do it. For some reason, I have had judges say, oh yeah, I just did it because I knew they could appeal. Please don't be that judge. That makes you other judge. If you don't know the answer, what do you say?
I'm 99% sure that I know the answer, but let me confirm it.
Erin, you're the worst person at raising your hand and waiting to be called on, but your answer is great. In case you could not hear that on the stream, Erin said, I'm 99% sure that I know that answer, but let me confirm it. That one works. The one I use is, hey, I want to double check something. Give me just a second. And then I either pull out my phone and check, or if there's another judge that I see nearby that I can check with, I might check with them instead. So, especially if you're somebody who doesn't trust yourself or maybe doesn't always get your rules and policy correct, or say you're at your first comp event and you're not used to policy, get one of those lines ready. Have it ready to go in your head, whatever your version of it is. You know, let me double check that, or I'm pretty sure I know this, but I just want to make sure, or the other one I love, policy has changed on that recently. I want to make sure I got this new policy right. Sometimes with things like missed trigger or hidden card error, when those policies change, I always like to reread the policy when I'm making the ruling to make sure that my brain is on the most current version. So telling the truth to a player in those types of situations is a good thing. The one that I do not ever want to hear a judge use is, I have no idea, let me go find out. Please don't. We want the players to think we know everything. If we don't know everything, we can say stuff like, I'm 99% sure, but I want to check. Yeah.
and then you can come back to the table and say, I was right. Here's what we're going to do.
Right. Yeah, you can always come back and say I was right, whether you were or not. They don't have to know that. I prefer personally not to be dishonest with the players, but I never told them I thought I knew it anyway. I never tell the players I think I know the answer. I just tell them I want to double check. My double check might mean I have no clue and I'm going to go find out, but I'm going to tell the players I'm going to double check. Zach? Probably not. So that the stream can hear that, Zach said, don't tell the players this card is older than me, let me look it up. You know, you want to maintain control of your judge call, and you want the players to think that you know what you're talking about, so telling them that you need to check something is fine. If checking something involves talking to the head judge, that's fine too. A lot of times, if you check with the head judge, then you go back to the players and tell them something, they're less likely to appeal because they know that the head judge already got involved in your call. Does that make sense? If you have another judge with you, if they're shadowing the call and you're even 1% unsure, you can consult with them. There is nothing wrong with that. You know, don't be afraid to discuss or consult whether you're the senior judge or not in that scenario. If I have a brand new judge who's shadowing me, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to double check with him anyway. That doesn't make me lesser in any way by asking someone else. So it's much better to get your calls right than it is to not ask somebody. After we have a resolution that everybody is happy with, now we can leave the table, right? Now we solve the problem? Whether or not they appealed, they're all happy with it. We're good now, right? No? Why not, Caleb? Right, if I did the fix, let's say I did the fix. Now I can leave the table, right? No? What? Yeah, I'm going to make sure they don't have any other questions. I've seen judges say, anything else I can help you with? Is there anything else I can do for you? Do you have any other questions? You'd be shocked how many times they say something. Well, what about? And when you don't say that, you know what happens? You take 3 steps away from the table, and then you hear them go, hey, judge. You turn around, they're like, but what about if? You know, because now that you've answered their question, they start thinking about, well, what am I going to do next with this new information I just got from this judge call? So stick around a little bit. If you're heading off to another call or something, it's not always possible. But if you have nothing else to do at that very moment, when you finish a judge call, back away slowly, because they might call you back. Caleb?
Or depending on where at in the turn, they may forgot if they drew or not.
Yeah, they might have forgotten what happened immediately before they called you and have another question. What else?
When this is a call from a player that wanted away from the table, there may be follow-up questions to how this plays out.
Absolutely. When the player takes you away from the table and says, what happens if I play this into his that? And you're like, oh, this is going to be great. You should probably stick around and watch, because guess what? The opponent's about to ask you the exact same question. Also, when that player wants to ask you a question away from the table, sometimes that makes the opponent uncomfortable. If they're not used to that type of situation, they might think you're helping them or coaching them or telling them some secrets to how to play Magic, presuming that clearly I know some secrets to how to play Magic, right? Don't ask me for play advice. You don't want to do that. But in that case, some kind of follow-up with the opponent. Oh, hey, he just had a quick question. Sorry we stopped your match. Let me give you guys some extra time. But addressing that opponent there helps kind of bring things back together. And then you can stand there and wait till he makes his awesome play that he just asked you about, so that his opponent can say, he can't do that. And you're like, actually. Yeah. Zach, what else? Yeah. Can I spell skate this? Right. As soon as the player asks you, can I spell skate this, and you tell them, yes, they can, that is not a good time to walk away, because you know what's about to happen next, right? Yeah. Also, before you walk away from that table, give them a time extension. How many of you have gotten the judge call? This one usually occurs with about 1.5 minutes left in the round. Judge? Yeah, how can I help you? Hey, we had a judge call earlier this round, and they didn't give us a time extension. Well, now there's 1.5 minutes left on the clock. Well, how long was your judge call earlier this round? Oh, it was about 12 minutes. Yeah. If you stopped their match, you should give their time back. If whatever it is took less than a minute, I've heard some people say I don't give time extensions for less than a minute. If the players seem like they might at all in any way be interested, I give them a minute. Because giving them 1 minute doesn't significantly change the time at the end of the round, but it does significantly change their ability to complain later. So, you know, if you stopped their match and you're actually watching the clock, I give them the time that they actually got. You know, it took 1.5 minutes for their judge call. I round up. Here's your 2 minutes. Now we're done. You can go back to playing Magic, and later on you can't complain about not getting any time. But when there's 35 seconds left in the round and some player calls you over and says, you know, we had 3 judge calls this round and none of them gave us any extra time, and now we want 14 minutes. Yeah. So yeah, do your fellow judges a favor. Write your time extension on the match slip and put your initials next to it so we know who did it. That way we can blame you for their 12 minutes.
I've actually
Yeah.
had a call like that before where there was a penalty written on the back of the slip and no time.
Exactly. Especially when the penalty involves, yeah, and then they had to shuffle their libraries, and I'm like, this is clearly a deck check penalty. Why is there not a time extension? Put your initials on it, too. Yeah, I had an event that I was doing at a Grand Prix one day, and apparently a member of the stage staff had randomly wandered through the event, stopped and answered some judge call, and given them an extra 7 minutes. There's a random +7 on one of my match slips. And the players insisted that a judge had done it. I later found out it was the stage lead who had been on his way to the bathroom and had walked by and done this. And I was thinking, are these players lying to me? Like, none of my judges gave them an extra 7 minutes. Why are they telling me this? So make everybody's life easier and do the things you're supposed to do. The last thing I want to add on here is when you're done with that judge call, follow up. And what I mean by that is, based on what happened in the judge call, there might be something else you need to do. If you did give them a 7-minute time extension, tell the end of round person. If you think that what they did was suspicious and you're concerned that maybe there was more there than meets the eye, maybe you keep watching them, or maybe you talk to the TO, or maybe you talk to your team lead and say, hey, I saw something there, let's keep an eye on that. Maybe at this point there was nothing that you wanted to do about it, but it doesn't mean forget about it forever. Maybe the player told you it was their second GRV, but you double check with the scorekeeper to make sure that the other one got put in because you know the next one's going to be their third and they're playing Narset and you're pretty sure it's going to happen. So just because you walked away from the table, the judge call is not necessarily over. If there was something that you maybe want to watch for later in the day, something you want to follow up on, don't forget about those things just because you walked off from the table. And as a final note, maybe you want to write down the details of those judge calls because you don't want to be like me and 2 years later try to remember what activated ability it was and you can't remember the name of it. All right. Any questions about how to take a judge call? Yes, sir. You get those people. If we're talking about a situation where they have legitimate questions about the game that they're playing, I'm happy to answer those questions. When they get into philosophy or theory or things that aren't relevant to the current game, then I'm at the point of saying we can talk about this after your match. If we have a player who is actually so brand new to Magic that they can't play the game, sometimes you do have to give them that nudge and say, hey, I know there's a lot going on here, but in the interest of time, we're going to get back to playing. You give them what information you can, and you do need to get them on with playing the game. Most players are reasonably understanding of the time situation. So, yeah, what's up? Of course. Yeah.
Target player, their target a creature, and target player.
Yeah.
Searing blades.
Okay.
Won them the game. They misread it, targeted the player, then the creature, and the opponent didn't catch it either.
Yeah.
Won them the game. Won them the round. And then they came later and said, "Hey,
Yeah. Generally, at that point, matches that's done, it's done. Yeah, it sucks, but what's done is done. And at that point, we're not, except in certain unusual circumstances, we're not going to go back and give penalties in a match that has already occurred.
Okay.
If we think they're cheating, then that's a different issue, and we deal with that. If we think we just can't read, you did a thing, you shouldn't have done the thing. Yeah. Well, and you're at F&M. So we're not going to be giving anybody like a warning at F&M anyway. So yeah, at that point, we're going to move on with life. I suspect Erin is giving me that look for a reason, right? Okay. Any other questions about how to take a judge call? All right.
Do you have any special added on things? You talked about shadowing earlier.
Yeah.
About if you had another judge with you that you were shadowing and you're the senior judge. Most of the time when you're the senior judge shadowing, you're probably not taking the call.
Yeah.
So is there anything that you could add that would help people who are shadowing someone who's new for the first time, what they can do?
Oh, shadowing and being shadowed. This one, for my senior judges, my L2s in the room, I'm talking to you right now. The shadowing and being shadowed thing. When you are shadowing somebody on a call, let them get to the table first. If you both arrive at the table at the same time, the players don't know who to look at and they don't know who needs their attention. If you are the shadowing judge, take a half step back, let the judge who's taking the call get to the table, let them start talking to the players, then you can move in either behind them or across the table. I've seen benefits from either side of the table. However, if especially the players know you or know that the other judge is new and you're not, they will look at you. My level 2s, my senior judges in here, some of my senior L1s even, I'm talking to you right now. Ignore them. When the players ignore the judge who took their call and they start looking up at you, look at the judge who took the call, because when they look at you, your eyes will redirect them to where they're supposed to be looking. If they try to address you at that point, you say, oh, he's taking this call, or she's taking this call, or whoever is taking this call. You know, you can use the person's name. Oh, Caleb is your judge. Do not take that call away from the person who took it. That's not shadowing, that's stealing. There is a difference. But what that teaches our players is they can choose their judge. If I walk up to the table at the same time as Kenny and we're both standing there, are we going to let the players pick one of us gets to take the call? No! You get a judge. When the judge gets to the table, that's your judge. They are going to continue taking this call unless there is a significant and exceptional reason that I'm going to hand it off. For example, I walked up to a player and the player said, "Do you speak Italian?" In this case, I did in fact hand off that call because no, I do not speak Italian. But it just so happened there was a judge nearby who did. Random coincidence, it worked. I did absolutely hand off that call because I had not started the call. So getting a translator at that point, it just made more sense to hand it off. But other than that, when you're shadowing a call, put yourself behind, be quiet, let that judge take the call. If they're going to get it wrong, the correct answer is not to jump in and fix it. It is to take the judge away from the table. Hey, before you finish that ruling, can I talk to you for just a second? And then I'm going to take you away from the table. We're going to talk about it. We're going to come back to the table. You're going to finish delivering that ruling. That way the players are still getting a ruling from the judge who took the call. So if you need to jump in there, totally fine to do it, but do it with the judge away from the table, maintains that chain of command feeling, lets your players get a consistent ruling from the judge who took it, and it teaches the players to respect that judge. Otherwise, it becomes a pick and choose game. Then the players just look at the judge they like better. As a female judge who travels, I will tell you, life experience here, when I'm in a city where the players don't know me, they always look at the male judge if we arrive at the table at the same time, every single time. Just a presumption, it's very common. But in my home area where all the players know me, if me and one of the newer judges arrive at the same time, they look at me. Has nothing to do, I'm the same person. It doesn't matter. Like, what city am I in does not change how much magic knowledge I have. It's a presumption from players. If you're the judge who is taking the call and somebody is shadowing you and you don't know, tell the players, hey, I want to consult with someone real quick. Especially if you have a shadow there, it's real easy. Don't look at the other person and expect them to jump in. They're not going to rescue you from your call. You took the call, it's yours, you're stuck with it. It's not hot potato, you cannot hand it off. In the situation where you need to hand it off, for example, a really complicated card count, which is not my strong suit, where I see, say, CJ Crooks, who is very, very good at card counting nearby, I might tell the players, hey, this call is going to require a card count. I have CJ here who's a specialist in card counting. See, I got a specialist. Not I'm incompetent. Whether true or not, that's a whole other story. But I'm not going to tell the players I'm incompetent. I'm going to tell them I'm a specialist. So in that way, you can hand off to a shadow and save face a little bit and not tell the players, hey, I don't know everything. So yeah, that's my thoughts on shadowing. The big one, though, is it's your call. You're stuck with it. All right. I think Erin is now definitely giving me the look. I'm gonna mute.